धा धा तक गिन धा धा तक गिन धा धा दिन ना धा तक गिन धा धा दिन ना धा तक गिन धा दिन ना धा तक गिन धा। सुबह जैसे आँख खोली थी हमने सोचा कि चलो चाय वाय का बंदोबस्त करते हैं, देखते हैं। जैसे आँख खोली, इधर भी मुर्दा इधर भी मुर्दा, और मक्खियाँ ऐसी उनके ऊपर कि जैसे कि लेयर ऑफ मक्खियाँ नहीं होती। जब तक असी जिंदा तुसी भी जिंदा हो, जब 80 मर गए तो फिर उसकी जिम्मेवारी साड़ी नहीं।
Goosebumps already. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Partition 73. I'm Ragini, and I will be with you for the next 16 evenings as we speak to 16 individuals to explore the partition of 1947 and 48. Our guests are from all walks of life, and with them we will talk about loss, home, family, food, friendship, art, music, politics, identity, and much more. For those of you who don't know me, I run Third Culture Cooks, which is an initiative that looks at history, culture, and food, and sort of the confluence of all three of them. And I typically do this through sit-down dinner experiences. And I was just saying to Shubhra that usually every August, I host dinners around the partition of 1947, but because of COVID this year, I was unable to. And so I thought, well, let's take this conversation online and make sure that it still happens, even if we can't all physically be together. Through our conversations over the next 16 days, we will go to Punjab, we will go to Sindh, Bengal, and Hyderabad. Although there has been a stream of scholarship on partition, I strongly believe that it remains institutionally underrepresented. And I also believe that the plight of millions of people remains largely unrecognized. Personally, 3 of my 4 grandparents were displaced during partition, so it is a very large part of who I am today and why I am today. And I'm indebted to all of the interviewees who have agreed to allow me to weave their story into this 16-day tapestry. And I'm really, really curious for what we find out. I'm really curious to start the conversation, to hear everyone's experiences, and to build our collective story bank together. So without further ado, I would love to introduce today's guest, who brings a personal and professional expertise in partition. Shubhra Chatterji is a writer, producer, director, content creator, food researcher, and excellent storyteller. She is best known for her work on Lost Recipes, Ekant, the award-winning Chakle India, and if you've been anywhere on Instagram recently, the wildly successful History on a Plate, and primarily wildly successful because of her incredibly infectious smile and curiosity. So, hi.
Hello, and thank you for that. That's glowing words. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ragini. And the only thing I'd like to tell everyone that just before we got on, Ragini and I were just, exchanging some notes because I was going through some pictures of my grandparents who, my Nana and Nani, who were also displaced by, the partition in 1947. And the one thing, she was telling me a story from, her grandmother, and I was telling her a story from my. We both had goosebumps and tears in our eyes. So we both said, okay, we have to make sure we don't cry. Okay, we have to try not to cry because this is personal, this is very, very personal. Of course, there is so much one has done around it professionally also, but I think the reason why you, Ragini, are doing what you're doing and why I do what I do is because we are the after effects of what happened in 1947. We are, who we are today because of what happened in 1947. So it may have been 73 years ago, but it's still something that affects each and every one of us who've sort of experienced it in our families or even seen it around us. So what I basically want to say is thank you for doing this. It is extremely important to have these conversations and have these conversations so that we don't forget what happened and can understand what happened, because a lot of us in a lot of our homes, these conversations never really took place. They were taboo because you can't talk about what happened.
Yeah.
उस समय की बात नहीं करेंगे, we don't want to talk about that. So it's important to open these up so people people like us become curious to know what really happened, and also those who haven't really experienced partition personally become curious to know what happened and how it's still impacting all of us.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think I could have said it better. And I think you and I recently had a conversation about how so much of it needs to be unpacked because no one has had the opportunity. People sort of had to get on and, keep going with life. And now we have the luxury of the opportunity of unpacking the after effects, as it were, of that very hurried and life-changing event.
Absolutely, yes. We have the luxury of because we don't have to do what they did and get on with life, but we're not scarred by it like they were.
True.
Hence we can afford to unpack, cry a few tears here, and yet go back and sleep at night having no nightmares about what happened.
That's so true.
With them.
Yeah. And I think even just the sense of, we can, for those parts of our family that came over whichever border, whichever side your family, whoever is watching, whichever side your family went to, we can only trace our history back to the land where a lot of our family is for a very small number of years. So I think, at least for me, somewhere there's this feeling of needing to know more about my own family's history that happened before 1947, which is the bulk of anybody's family's history, right? Like it's such a short amount of time to date. So I think that's only when we learn and appreciate those stories will we have an understanding of what that was.
So true. Very, very true.
So this is a nice little place for us to start. I mean, we've talked about how this is by nature personal to you and I, and I'm sure to many people watching as well. But maybe you can start by giving us some background as to your connection to partition and your family's connection to partition.
Okay, so I am half Bengali and half Punjabi. But it's the Bengali side of my family was not affected by partition because we were already in central India many years before 1947. So there is one side of the family completely, not affected by the events of 1940. It's interesting to compare that complete, sort of, nonchalance about the whole thing, and you empathize with what happened in your own way, but you don't really connect with it. So that is one side of the family, and everyone's fine. The other side of the family, which is my mother's side of the family, we are Punjabis, and we are Punjabis from Punjab, which is now in Pakistan, which is essentially my grandfather was from Montgomery and my grandmother was from Bheda. And in Bheda, so because I am interested in tracing our family history, like you said, it's like a dream. Like I want to go to Pakistan, I want to go to Montgomery, I want to go to Bheda, I want to go to Lahore, which is where my grandparents lived and studied. And our grandparents went to the same college, Government College Lahore is where they both studied, different years, but they both studied there. So it's like this dream to go there. So I keep looking up pictures and tweets, and you know how it is, whatever information you can, videos, whatever you can find online to find some connection, to try to understand how life used to be for them over there. So, that in Bheda, I figured that, I mentioned this earlier on my live as well, that there's a Sethiya da Mohalla and the Sahaniya da Mohalla, which is still there. And that is probably where my grandmother, my great grandmother was a Sethi who married a Sahani. So their homes must have been there. And I look at those pictures and I wonder, could this be where, our roots are? Like they're somewhere there. Matlab, is gali mein, nahi to us gali mein. This is like, that, and you thinking back to that time and trying to trying to understand your roots, because my roots are not, half of my roots are not in Delhi or Bombay or Goa, where my grandparents lived after they moved to India. My roots are in Pakistan, and one can't like just surgically remove that piece of the body and throw it away. You can't do that. So yeah, so one half of my family is from Pakistan. Um, we were based in Lahore. My grandparents were living in Lahore at the time of partition, and they had to suddenly leave like everyone else. And Ragini, do you want to play the pictures? Because I have some pictures of the family, which it would be nice if people see. Okay, so that's my Nana ji and Nani ji. First picture, the one on the left, is the only photograph that still survives from the first 30 years of their lives. This is just after they were newly married. This is at Lahore railway station. They are leaving for Delhi from Lahore because my Nanaji at that time was posted in Delhi. He was in the customs. So he went to Lahore, he went back home to get married. And right after the marriage, this is sort of like, newly shadi shuda, they're leaving for their new home. And you can see that shy smile.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nani's shy smile and, looking down. So this is the only photograph we have from there. And it is probably with us only because my Nanaji's eldest brother had this photograph in his house in Shimla, and he has always been based in Shimla, not in Lahore at the time of partition. So because he was in Shimla, everything remained as was. So this photograph remained with him. It's like one of those photographs of a momentous occasion. If it was, anything else, he probably wouldn't have even had the photograph because we didn't take that many photographs back then.
Yeah.
So so there's no wedding album, there's no childhood pictures, there's nothing, because when you suddenly have to flee for your life, the last thing you take is the family album. You leave it behind, and so of course it got left behind like everything else, and it must have burned like everything else did when the house was burned down. My grandparents watched their house burn down. Their building was set on fire. They escaped. They went. They went to a neighbor's house, and later they snuck out of there. So that and everything they was destroyed. I mean, they came here with practically nothing. The only thing my grandmother had was a pair of earrings she was wearing, and that's the only thing that I have got from her. There are no heirlooms. There are no, and on the other side of the family there are these silk saris, and there's jewelry. There is bartan. There is so much which is there. There are these heads of sambar, which are remnants of hunts. So
wow.
there's a whole home that you inherit, but on the other hand, there's nothing except these memories, and these memories, were something that were also never really shared with us. So on the right is this picture of my nani. This is so right. When they fled, they left Lahore. They got on a train. That because he was in government service, he was in the customs, so he sort of managed a place for himself, his wife, and their three small children at that time. To get they managed a place on the train, and they came across, and my Masi must have been 3 then, and she still remembers that when they crossed over to India. When they crossed over to India, there was a great cheer, and nobody had anything, but somehow there was like a tin of, peaches, like tinned peaches lying around, and they opened that up, and usse sabne muh meetha kiya. Everyone in that dabba, so in that whole dabba, somehow, I don't know how that tin, peach came there, but yeah, and so for her, that's been such a strong, mnemonic, such a strong memory that still today she eat, peaches, because she associates it with particular time. So yeah, so I mean, so that is coming to India. Of course, the coming was not easy. It wasn't as easy as just getting across to India, though. I mean, there is barely any distance between Lahore and Amritsar. We're just like 49 kilometers between the two places, but there's such a large world of difference actually. So when they arrived in India, they lived in Shimla. This is, you can see, you can make out that this is a hilly place. This is in Shimla, and my nanny is knitting a sweater, probably for the winter months, because and this is very soon after they arrived, and you can see the difference in her. You can see the difference in a young, newly married, happy bride, and a mother of three, loss. Just the expression, this not even being able to smile for the camera expression, it's very evident. My nanny went into depression after they came to India. So my Nanaji's eldest brother was in Shimla, like I was saying earlier. So that's where they went. That's where the family collected together, So whoever was wherever came there. There were four brothers. They all came and lived together for a while. They all collected together. And there were four brothers and their mother. My Nanaji's father, which is my great grandfather, had passed away when his sons were quite young. So the four brothers lived together for some time before everyone sort of found their feet, and moved slowly away from Shimla to other parts of the country. Of course, I mean, our family, I would say my grandfather was one of the lucky ones, because lose his business. He didn't have a business to lose. He had a job because he was with the customs. So he got posted somewhere, and, they went and lived there. Like, he still had a job, but there were so many thousands, millions of people. 15 million people were displaced. 1 million people were slaughtered, killed. I mean, there are reports that, from what I read, about 150,000 to 200 women were raped. So if my grandmother and your grandmother got through, they were lucky. There were so many others who were not as lucky. It's actually, just thinking of that is crazy. And what for no fault of yours, for no fault of yours, all you are doing is living in one place, and suddenly you're told that, listen, you're not in India anymore, and you have to go to India. So your India, where you're living, is anymore. You're in a new country called Pakistan. And you have to go to India. India is 50 kilometers away, or 100 kilometers away, or even if it's 5 kilometers away, you have to go there. And in going there, you lose everything you've ever had, and you fight all the dangers. We can go ahead to the next slide. This is the family which I was saying, that they gathered in Shimla. So you can see the four brothers, and they would live together. And you can see my Pardadi over there sitting right in the middle with her various bahus and grandchildren. So this was when they used to live in Shimla, and I love the dog. I obviously don't know the dog's name, so but there is a dog in the picture.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, so that was the family. We all my mums, uncles, and aunts. My mother is not in this picture. She wasn't born then.
Okay.
After my grandmother went into depression, the doctor actually recommended that she have another child, to take her mind off stuff and to be able to focus on something. So that's when my grandmother had another child, not my mother yet, my uncle, and then she had my mother. So my mother was, always the most loved, spoiled, young child. And I can see that difference. Okay, so my Masi, if you see on the extreme right, that's my Masi, the little girl over there.
Yeah.
And that's my Nani. She's sticking to her mother, if you can see. So my Masi and my mother, they have a 13-year difference between them. And I can see this difference of a child that has lived through partition, and of one that hasn't, Like, by the time my mother was born, her parents had somewhat managed to gather their life again. But my Masi went through so much more. And even today, my Masi is, more frugal than my. saves. She doesn't throw anything away. She keeps everything. You know, we say Masi's house is a museum. Like you find everything over there. Like it's a thing. But one has to realize where that comes from. It comes from losing everything you had as like a 3 or 4-year-old child, and then seeing that, you know, seeing your house burn down, and so it stayed on. And while, you know, so you can see that difference of. We can go to the next picture as well now. Okay, so this is my great grandparents. That is Lala Latkan Ram, my Pardada, and this is Srimati.
Wow.
That's my Par Nani. No, she won't be Par Nani. She's my Par Nani. She would be, no.
Okay. Yeah,
she's my Nanaji's mother.
Yeah.
So it's their 4 sons, you know, one of whom was already in India, the other 3 left, and they came here. Now, Lalaji, as he's called, he's called Lalaji in the family, was a Lalaji. He was a businessman, right? And he had a younger brother called Lala Matkan Ram. You know, we laugh about these names now. What is Lala Latkan Ram and Lala Matkan Ram? But we lost touch with the Matkan Ram side of the family during partition. Okay. And it was so many years later, Ragini, you wouldn't believe, it was when my grandfather passed away and they went to Haridwar to do his rituals and put the ashes in the. That they discovered in the pothis that the pandits write over there. They write the lineage. They note down the lineage. So they went to the pandits over there to update. You know, कि अच्छा अभी इसके बाद इसका बेटा ये है, इसका बेटा ये है. You know, they write married to this person. So it's like a family tree that is written over there. And over there they found the Matkan Ram side of the family, and that's how they found. That they realized, okay, these guys survived, they are here, and then they were got in touch with. Of course, we're not close, we're not too much in touch, but one knows that they exist, that they moved here, that they are also a branch of the Punshi family. So they are, and this was before Facebook, right? This was, I'm talking about 1981. This, you couldn't do a search for Punshi surname and come across. It's actually not a very common surname, and the Poonch. Because when they went and settled in Montgomery, they went from Poonch. So वो Poonch से आए हैं, Poonchi हैं.
I must say, Parnani's eyes are so wide. So wise, not wide. I've been drawn to them the whole time we've been talking. There's just so much character in that photo. It's beautiful. It's really.
I haven't met her. I never could meet her. I've only seen photographs of her and my Nana. So I've never really met them. So so that's basically my family. That's what happened with us. But the same thing also happened with so many other people, and we can move on. Oh yeah, this is this is my Nana and Nani with. So that's Nana ji with my cousin. He passed away in 1981, which is before. Never got to meet him, but that's him. And Nani, so you see Nani now. I mean, Nani looks normal, Nani looks cheerful, Nani is like any other Nani, and we are like jumping on her and doing all the musty. But Nani and I never spoke about partition. We never spoke about what happened. That's where it stops. And Nani was known for her silly jokes, and Nani was known to make everyone laugh, but you couldn't broach the topic of Lahore. You couldn't broach the topic of what happened back home. And I say home because to her that was home. She never really made home anywhere else. Because when they moved to India, they were constantly traveling because my Nanaji was in a transferable job. So they lived in Palampur, they lived in Goa, in Bombay, Nagpur, Ahmedabad, Shillong, Meerut. Oh, wow. And Delhi, and soon after he passed away. So they never really had a home in India, and she never really felt that she had a home in India. There was home for her was also always the home that she had left behind. So yeah, so that's my family, and now I think we should move on to the rest of the country, because one has to realize that it's not just one part of the country. It's both the east and the west, and they have both been so affected. If we this is just an image. This is of course in on the eastern part of the country, carrying someone. This is how people. I mean, there's nothing I need to say about this image.
Yeah.
This is partition. This is 1947. This is, if look at those eyes. That's all you need to do. You just need eyes, and we can move on to the next slide, which is actually yeah. It wasn't just people who were divided. It was everything that was divided.
Yeah.
Books and libraries were divided. If you go to Chandigarh Museum, you have this beautiful collection of Gandhara sculptures. And one half of them is here, the other half is in Lahore Museum. So the sculptures in the museums, I mean, Batwara, that word explains it. It's like you take a house and you divide it between two brothers, and every little thing is,
It really brings up the question for me, I mean, we can leave this as an open-ended question, but it really brings up the question is that did we get a half of something, or did we get a full nothing? What was it that we got,
Yeah,
just to
it
on. Yeah.
all over. Did we get half of something, or did we get a full nothing? It's just, but that's what it is. No, that's what it is. And it was, and when you think about it right now, we feel it's unnecessary, but maybe it was necessary at that time. But you feel so angry because how did partition happen? It happened suddenly, and that was the problem. The problem was that neither the Muslim League or the INC was agreeing to the terms and conditions. The partition of India was actually supposed to happen in June 1948.
Yeah.
It wasn't supposed to happen in 1947, and then it suddenly Lord Mountbatten comes down in the month of June, and he says, you have 2 months to figure this out. He tells Radcliffe that you have 2 months to figure out where is India and where is Pakistan, and where is East Pakistan. And Radcliffe later has admitted outdated census data and outdated maps. So, and census data to see which villages had a larger population of Muslims and which had a larger population of Hindus. So if the data he was working with was wrong, imagine the injustice that would have. What is the logic of this entire thing?
Absolutely. And it was largely, it was done out of an office in Delhi primarily. So that also can't be forgotten, that there is such a grave physical reality to partition fundamentally that it cannot be something that is a helicoptered in decision, unfortunately.
When we read about it, we question how was this allowed to happen?
Yeah.
How did the world allow this to happen? It's the same as the Jewish genocide. It's how did the world allow this to happen? And these are the questions we have now. But it happened. It happened to in our own country. This is exactly how it happened. There was a guy sitting over there on at a desk with a pen and a piece of paper, and he drew a line.
Yeah, exactly.
That is what.
When partition happened, people didn't know for days and weeks after whether they were in India or Pakistan.
Yes. They didn't know. Yeah. So suddenly somebody would tell them, "Ki, this is Pakistan," and then somebody would say that this is India. Because how do they know? They didn't know where they were. And then, there are, we were discussing, what I have read, I don't know if this is true or not, but there was a house in Bangladesh, half of which ended up in India and the other half ended up in, East Pakistan. So what's going on? Half the village in India, half the village in Pakistan.
Yeah.
So it was so haphazard. It was so. Now, when you think of it, it was so unnecessary. If one had just taken time, given people time.
Absolutely.
It's recently when the entire migrant crisis was happening. This is exactly what I was thinking of. It reminded me of this suddenly upping and leaving
Yeah.
Is what happened then. And it was 15 million people. That's like 15. I mean, yeah, I can't even that number. When you start thinking of that number, it's crazy. It's like a million is 10 lakhs.
Yeah.
So many millions of people. It's just insane. Okay, then I think we should go to the next slide. Yeah. This is something that really, always touches a note with me. Defining moment that is neither the beginning nor the end. Partition continues to influence how the people and states of post-colonial South Asia, their past and future. So it comes up, and what I like, what I identify with is the fact that it was neither the beginning nor the end.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it was. One can't quantify it. We can move on to the next slide, which basically, how did people come? They came, and we can go quickly over the next few slides now, because this is just different ways of people coming. They came by foot, they came by bullock cart, depending on, look at the trains. My God, look at the trains. These are the trains they came on.
Yeah.
These are the trains. Some people, of course, could fly, but and the one thing I see, if you see these pictures of these trains, they are always these wide shots.
Yeah.
Whatever picture you think, I mean, even the next one, I think, this is trucks, like.
Yeah.
But the movie, but in that movie, it's you see very clearly how women were shoved into trucks and sent across, and the men would walk, they would figure their way. So people would push their sisters into trains, into trucks, and then they'd say, "We'll come." All of those are wide shots. These are the close shots. This is what you don't see. This is now, Ragini, imagine that time. It was the month of August. There was kichad. It was raining. Your opening had I think your grandmother talk about flies. It just this is what it was. Yeah. We don't see it in these black and white pictures, but imagine walking through that kichad, walking for days without having the luxury of taking a bath or even like anything. I mean, a bath is like a food. You don't anything. You're desperate. You're just walking. People are dead around you. These are there were pictures I didn't put here because I didn't want to subject people to this, honestly. But there are pictures of human skeletons being, and you see the bones, you see the ribs, because vultures have descended and they have eaten.
Yeah.
This, and for no fault of theirs. Yeah, I mean, these were people like me and you, like my grandparents and yours.
Yeah, and I think you and I, we briefly touched on this maybe just before the call, that many of these people were people who were thrust into not just going across the border, but all of this loss. And so they were accustomed to a lot of the creature comforts, it was on so many psychological levels.
Yes.
A loss. It was immediate, it was far flung, it was long standing, it was short term, it was long term, it was everything all at once.
I don't think there's ever been an event like is ever again. One can't imagine what I can now understand why my grandmother would never speak of this. I wouldn't want to. If I had had to go through something like this, I wouldn't want to speak about it ever. This is just, and like you said, I put this picture because these would not have been women who were poor. These would have been women from good homes.
Yeah.
Who had to carry trunks on their heads and whatever they had and walk across. These were women who were accustomed, and you can see she's pregnant. She's pregnant, she's carrying a child and she's carrying a trunk on her head and she's probably walking barefoot.
Yeah.
And this is all that they've carried. This is all that they can carry.
Yeah.
Just one little trunk.
We take with them.
And that little bartan over there. That's that's it.
Yeah.
And I think I put that picture there to show the little thing, the utensil.
Absolutely. And I mean,
this is what they came to. This is what they people who were used to living in Havelis, and they were used to living in, you know, decent homes.
Yeah.
This is what they were thrust into. And if you look at, there's that little bucket over there that says fire. That little girl, I don't know if you can see her.
Yeah, right here
in the picture.
Yeah.
Just under the tree.
Yeah.
There is she's carrying a bucket which has fire written on it. Is this frozen? Ragini, are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Just a minute.
Hello.
I think we froze for a second.
Am I back? Hello. Oh, I think we've just momentarily lost Shubhra, but I'm sure she'll come back and join us in a second. But I mean, these pictures are just absolutely heartbreaking. And, we've seen these. You run one Google search and this is what comes up for partition, because this is what the reality was for lots and lots of people. And I think what's really important for us to remember is that not only were lives lost, but lives had to be rebuilt almost immediately. There was no time for people to recover from this. They had to hit the ground running. And we will come to in future days talking about gender, but there was a lot of violence from all sides against women, and a lot of older men marrying younger women, and then the government's trying to bring those women back and back into India or Pakistan, wherever they were from. And so I think the psychological effects of that alone would have been huge. And you can just see the expression in the eyes of the folks here as to what it was they had just gone through. And then we move in and to one of the refugee camps, and Shubhra will be able to tell us where this is. But one of the refugee camps, maybe in Delhi or somewhere in Punjab or somewhere in Bengal. And actually what's really important to remember is that we can't talk about partition as a homogenous Indian event. Partition was not a homogenous Indian event. Punjab and Bengal in 1948 were very, very different places from one another. Bengal had been the center of World War I. It had been a thoroughfare for World War I. It had been where soldiers had been brought to hold till they went out to battle. It had been where a lot of resources went out of India. And it was where obviously the Bengal famine had just happened. And so Bengal was in a widely, widely different state to Punjab, in Punjab, most people would never have interacted with the British before or after partition, for that matter. It was largely rural. There were a couple of major cities, but most of the population had lived where they had lived for hundreds and hundreds of years, only to come to this. So I think it's there's so many aspects of it that we need to unpack. Okay, Shubhra is just connecting back, so we should have her in a minute or two. Right. So we're going to actually move on now. As soon as Shubhra's back, we are going to move on to talking about food. And we're going to move on to talking about food that was left behind. We're going to talk about food that was recreated. We're going to talk about what the importance of food was. What did that mean? And hi, welcome back. We were just having, I think you're on mute still. We were just having a quick chat with everyone about how different Punjab and Bengal were at the time of partition, where Bengal was a thoroughfare for World War I and II, for both people and resources coming in and out of India from there, largely going out. And also the Bengal famine, which had just happened, which had thrust, again, millions of people into absolute starvation and abject poverty, whereas in Punjab with the villages, most people had never met a British person before, right. And it would have come to them in a very different sort of surprise. There was a fervor around independence, maybe without the realization of the carnage that was to follow. But in some of those photos, we saw the dishes that people had, and we moved maybe to talking about what did food mean in all of this chaos.
So what you said is very right. The partition was a very different animal in the east and in the west. There was one part of the country which, like for example, like you said, the various things which had affected Bengal. I mean, the famine was there was a plague, there was famine, there was war, and then there was partition. It was like the final nail on the coffin. And before that, there were these massive riots in Calcutta. Even like a year, 2 years before even partition happened. So Calcutta had seen a lot of unrest already, and so Calcutta, I think, perceived uh, partition, and Bengal actually perceived partition very differently. What somehow, it has so happened that our focus always has been on Calcutta, but it wasn't Calcutta which was divided. It was Bengal.
Yeah.
And we have really, I think partition in the East hasn't got as much attention as it should have. It hasn't got as much attention as what happened in the West. Maybe because the scale of people was far less. The land, if you see that map, you can see, I mean, it's not a very large country, Bangladesh, and the number of people were comparatively, displaced people were comparatively less. So less people were affected. And when less people are affected, less of that emotion carries forward or is reported. Most of Bengal was not really affected, but those who've come from the Bangals, who've been displaced, and they've come from East Bengal to West Bengal and have had to settle here, they they have stories which will make you cry. I mean, like endlessly, because there's so much pain. And once again, realize that the eastern part of the country was again facing floods, as it does even now. There was monsoons, there was floods, which brings me to the thing, like, whether it was the west or the east, when they came and lived in camps, it didn't end there. They hadn't reached destination safely. A lot of people died in these camps because of contagious diseases, and the fact that after walking for days, after not eating for days, their immunity was next to nil. People were falling sick, they were dying like flies. And if you go back to the pictures, there is a very disturbing image of what people were going through in these camps. And this one, yeah, this is what was happening. People were dying, and they were just left to die. They were left to die. I mean, who's going to take care of them?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is what it was. And this is now okay. Now we talk about food. let's talk about something a little more cheerful. Um, in all of this loss, okay, I travel the country looking for lost recipes. Okay, I look for lost recipes. When I went to Punjab looking for lost recipes, for the longest, I wasn't finding the kind of stuff that I was accustomed to finding everywhere else, like amazing recipes which have got lost, something which was made, okay, you find it in, like, the Patiala royal family, for example.
Right.
But most of the recipes, I wasn't able to find something substantial, which is why, I haven't yet, I know I haven't yet figured it out enough, which is why there is no Lost Recipes of Punjab episode of Lost Recipes, because I need to first figure it out. I need to figure out how to tell the story, what to tell, what not to tell. I mean, I just noticed that it's already like 8:45, and we have so much to talk about still. How do I fit all of this into one episode, episodes are 44 minutes or 22 minutes? I can't.
Yeah.
I can't do justice to Punjab and its food. So I have chosen not to shoot Punjab and its food in the sense of a historical Lost Recipes representation. So anyway, so when these people came here, Ragini, they had nothing, right? We know, we have established that very clearly, that they had nothing. They had left everything behind. And how would they create home here? What would it be that would make that little tent in the refugee camp home? it would be the taste of home. That's all. They knew how to cook, right? From whatever rations they would get at the refugee camps, they would try to make food which they used to eat there.
Yeah.
That's the only, even now, like I spent a lot of my childhood in West Africa. We would travel 150 kilometers away to buy dal and chawal, right?
Yeah.
Because to be able to say that your home, I mean, your identity is your food. Your home is defined by the kitchen, by the food that is cooked in your kitchen.
Absolutely.
And this was the only way for people who had nothing to still carry home with them, to a refugee camp or to wherever they went. That's all they had. They knew how to cook that food. And if you give them atta, they will make rotis. If you give them dal, they'll make dal like it was made. They don't have ghee. Ghee nahi hai hamare paas. Wahan pe bahut ghee hota tha. So we'll do something else. We'll put some malai. Jo bhi mile, thoda sa mil jaye. Doodh dal denge usme. And that's why so many substitutions. So many, I remember we did this History on a Plate live with Varnika, where she made a bread halwa, which is born of the refugee camps, because they didn't have, suji, and they didn't have atta probably, or whatever atta they had, they were making rotis out of it, because roti is important.
Yeah.
So the bread, stale bread they had, they made halwa out of it. And one must realize the time. This is in August. This happened in August. By the time people came down, everyone, people were still coming down till October. August, September, October. It took time. It didn't happen in one day. It wasn't like 15th August, clean slice, and everyone's like neatly in their pockets where they need to be. It took time, and that's the festive season. That is your Ganesh Chaturthi. That is your Navaratras, which is so huge in Bengal.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine Bengal people leaving home during Durga Puja. Right. Durga Puja is the time when Ma Durga comes to her mother's house, and this is the complete opposite. So just imagine the psychological impact of that. Imagine arriving here and having to celebrate Dashera. What is Dashera? The victory of good over evil. Yeah. Where are you? What have you just been through? How do you believe good, will win over evil? Because all that you've seen for the last 2 months is only evil. You've only seen, so that's that time of the year. Diwali, how do you celebrate Diwali? Yeah. But you have to, because it gives you hope. Look at all of us locked down. We are still, it's Raksha Bandhan on Monday. Everyone has plans on what they're doing about Rakhi. Everyone's celebrating their birthdays while locked down. In fact, we're doing this more right now because it gives us hope. So they would, in their little camps or wherever they were, they would take whatever they had and try to recreate that sense of home. They would try to recreate that sense of a little celebration. And every family had lost people. It wasn't like you're suddenly displaced. You've lost, or you don't know where some people are. So many people were lost, So there were wives waiting for their husbands, and with the hope that they would come one day. There were sisters who were waiting for their brothers, mothers who didn't know where their children were, and in the middle of all that, you're seeking the comfort of home. Yeah. And the only thing that can give you that at that time is food. Which is why food plays such an important role in this, and which is and I'm not even, we haven't even got to the point where we talk about how the food culture of India was impacted by partition. We're still getting there. We're just talking about how food was so important in recreating home for so many people who had lost home. So yeah, and I think that's the message I actually wanted to drive home today. That is the importance of food. Food is your identity. Food is who you are. Food is your home. The first thing you set up in a new house is the kitchen. The first thing you do is take a pot of milk and you let it boil over so that there is abundance in the house. Absolutely. The first thing you make is a halwa. Yeah. And you set up the kitchen. बाकी घर में गद्दे पड़े हो हम सो लेंगे, but as long as the kitchen is set up, you can live in a house, right? Yeah, if a house doesn't have a kitchen, you don't live in it. It's simple. Absolutely. That's how it's been all all these years. That's how it is. And it's not just in India, anywhere in the world you go.
Yeah.
Ragini, you have lived away from India for many years.
Yeah.
What was home? Home eventually was defined by the food that was on your dining table every night, right? That is what made you who you are as opposed to your neighbors.
Absolutely. It's what gives you identity. And I think it's only in recent years that we've started, and I say recent years as maybe the last couple of decades, that we've started acknowledging food as this force. You know, everybody knows it, but it's so basic. It's so basic.
You don't even
Sometimes we forget to talk about it.
Yeah. Yes, that is, and that's again, food is not considered. Food has not been studied, you know, seriously. Food is what that's why I say history on a plate, because what is on your plate is your history. You know, it is as simple as that. One can study history through food, which is what I try to evangelize actually.
Do it very well, I add. No, absolutely.
So yeah, so this is what it is. This picture and this next one, both of these, we can, you know, you can see Kake the hotel, which is in Delhi, and that Quetta sweet shop.
Yeah.
This is what happened. Okay, so people knew how to cook. Those who had lost their businesses, they found a little whatever they could. They borrowed things from their neighbors. They borrowed things from their family over here. They set up these little shops first, you know, on the roadside. Slowly they got these shops and they started cooking. The entire dhaba culture of India is because of the refugees that have come to India from Pakistan, is because of the families, the many families who came here having lost all of their businesses there, and the only thing they knew how to do was cook. Roti to sab बना सकते हैं ना, रोटी बना सकते हैं, दाल बना सकते हैं, दाल रोटी बना के बेचते हैं, शायद कुछ पैसे मिल जाए, you know. And initially your first customers would be those around you in those refugee camps who are also seeking that taste of home,
same comfort.
Yeah.
Like we talked about all the heavier use of tomato from Peshawar coming to Delhi.
Absolutely. It's Delhi's food culture has changed entirely. Delhi's food culture, I mean, Shahjahanabad was very did not have all this cream and butter and tomato. It was very Purani Delhi, remnants of the, you know, the Mughal times. You had the most beautiful food there by itself. I mean, Delhi had its mutanjans and niharis and kebabs and everything.
Absolutely.
Tandoori chicken was born in Delhi, but it came from Peshawar. It came with Kundan Gujarat. It came to Daryaganj, which is, there was a lot of families moved. You know, my mother's bua used to live in Daryaganj, just outside, you know, Purani Delhi. A lot of families that came from Pakistan settled over there. There were these huge camps. I mean, if you go to Patel Nagar today, Patel Nagar is basically land that's been allotted to refugees. You know. So everyone who lives in Patel Nagar today has roots in Pakistan, unless of course they bought the land from, you know, the original owners. So huge parts. Okay, and when they would come with this food, you see a lot of restaurants would have like a Quetta sweet shop. The gentleman who's running that has come from Quetta.
From Quetta, yeah.
You know? You have Karachi sweets. You have Lahori halwa. This second picture is of Karachi. It's of Burns Road. Now, Burns Road in Karachi is a place where the Dilli walas are. It's famous for its food, and every second restaurant over there has Dilli in front of it.
Because Delhi Rabdi House.
Yes, this is Delhi Rabdi House. This and I was reading and you know an article which said that, you know, for a long time in Karachi, Delhi was associated with all the good things.
Right.
You know, Delhi was where the glamour was at. You know, Delhi was supposed to be the best food. Delhi was supposed to be, you know, the best, the most beautiful people. You know, the good life.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of people, when they came down, and this entire gully, this Burns Road, was settled by people who went to Pakistan from Delhi.
Okay.
They're called the Dilli Walas. And most of their shops had Delhi XYZ.
The name, yeah.
Like Delhi Rabri House, you know. And again, in this, and this happened everywhere, you know. In Pakistan today, you have Bombay sweets. Over here, we have Karachi sweets.
Sweets,
You
yeah.
know, we have Lahori kebab shop, and
Yeah.
it wasn't just the restaurants, it wasn't just the establishments, but even the recipes were named such, you know.
Yeah.
So you
And
this
that
is
was whether or not they were the actual recipes. It was just the memory of the place
memory,
to attach to the
exactly.
name. Yeah.
I open a dhaba, okay. So say I have come from Lahore to India. I open a dhaba. I call it Lahori, you know, Shubhra dhaba, whatever, Lahori dhaba. And
Yeah.
I make chicken curry like it was made in Lahore, and I call it Lahori chicken because it's, for me, it's not just, you know, it's not just, that's what I'm attached to. That's how I identify. It's a sense of identification, you know. For me, my food is Lahori.
Yeah.
My food is not Punjabi. My food is not Delhi wala khana. My food is not Lucknow ka khana. My food is
Is
from Lahore.
Yeah. And I think that's something that, I mean, that's part of the reason we're doing this, is that the reality of partition, it is in these stories. We can't take a paintbrush and, you know, say this was the experience. It's in these stories.
Similarly, in the
Absolutely.
East, you know, nobody who moved to India from, Bangladesh or East Pakistan, not one person would say that the Ilish of the Ganga is better than the Ilish of the Padma. Till today, you know, till today, there is this entire debate about which Ilish is better.
Yeah.
You know, and I personally, you know, from everything I have studied and I have read, I feel there was more lost food on the east side because a lot of the ingredients which were available in East Pakistan were not entirely available in West Bengal.
Right.
You know, certain things which would grow there, certain like for example, the Ilish of the Padma was not available here.
Right.
Right. So that is how some food was lost.
Yeah.
In people who came here, those who live there still continue to make it. You know, it's not like they're not making it, but those who have come here, they don't make that food that much more. Again, there is this whole thing of, okay, the food of East Bengal is more rustic. The food of East Bengal, you know, uses things differently. They use masalas differently. They have different ingredients. They have more bhartas, for example, you know, and in West Bengal, you don't have that many bhartas. The bharta is basically a mash.
Right.
In East Bengal, you would make a mash out of so many things. Yeah. While here, I am from a family that has roots in West Bengal, and we only make a bharta out of bharta or an aloo at most.
Yeah.
You know, but if you go to East Bengal, there'll be like beautiful little shrimps, you know, put into Karela. There'll be like a parwal ka bharta. There'll be a pumpkin mash. There'll be, you know, there's recipes like ilish, which is wrapped in pumpkin leaves and, you know, steamed. So like the food of East Bengal is beautiful. The flavors are slightly different. Yeah. Of course, it still lives in all those families who have come over to this side, but a lot of their cooking has also been influenced by what they have come here to. You know, the cooking styles, what is available in the markets over here, they have given into that.
Absolutely.
Whereas what I feel about you know, the Punjabis and oh, okay, all right, sorry, I got disoriented for a second. Now, what I feel about this side is that we haven't really lost too much in that sense, because we have tried to keep it alive. That is my takeaway from everything that I know, that a new cuisine has been created instead of an old one being lost. You know, a whole new cuisine has been created by those who have come here with memories of how they used to eat, but an old one hasn't really been lost.
Yeah.
If I hope you understand what I'm trying to get at.
Wonderfully put. And I mean, I'm just a little bit conscious of the time, but I think that's such a beautiful a beautiful thought for us to end on is that an old cuisine has not been lost, but a new one has been created from its memories. And I think that's so beautifully put. And